Hello, welcome to Supporting Our Children, Supporting Ourselves, Meeting the Social Needs of Gifted Students. I'm Dr. Vanessa Ewing at Base Village for Gifted, www.basevillageforgifted.com. At 2.5, Thomas was everything to me. We were especially close and still are, and I waited for him my entire life. Unfortunately, I wasn't doing a good job of taking care of myself. I was in the middle of a tough marriage and divorce, and I was at a position that I loved, and I loved working with the children, but I was struggling with some other things at work as well. In addition, I was taking on too much. So, in my quest for doing the best for myself and my son, I was also doing a lot of side work and teaching adults and doing everything that I could. I always had that pull yourself up from your bootstraps and you can do anything type of mentality, but it was going too far and too fast. Unfortunately, during this time, it created not only struggles for me, but for my son. And he really struggled, like many children do, because of all the shifts and changes, not only with the divorce, but with how I was doing. Dabrowski wrote a lot about overexcitabilities, or we might think of them as intensities in gifted children and adults. And these intensities include things like psychomotor, where we might have a lot of energy and need a lot of movement and need less rest. Sensual, where our senses can be heightened. So things that we can see and hear and touch and taste and smell become a lot, right? We're very sensitive to these things. Intellectual, that looks like passion and drive, being excited about the things that we love and the things that we like to learn. Imaginational, so being extremely creative and coming up with new ideas and just having a vivid imagination in general. And emotional, so that could be our emotions are big. So sadness can be very, very sad. Happiness can light up a room. And what can happen when our needs aren't being met as adults or children is it can start looking challenging. It can start looking like too much. It can start looking like nightmares. It can start looking like compulsive behavior, too much intensity, really struggling with some of our emotions and struggling with our thoughts. Dr. William Glasser discussed our basic needs for all people. So what I'd like you to do is think about what are some of the basic needs that are often missing for ourselves or for our children, and then use that knowledge to come up with ideas for how to better support ourselves, and in that respect also better support our children. So the 5 basic needs are love and belonging. So that's, who makes us feel loved, respected. That can be friendship and cooperation. Sometimes this is missing. I like to think about on a scale of 1 to 10, if 1 is we couldn't feel any worse and 10 is we couldn't feel any better. If we're walking into a situation feeling like a 5, feeling pretty average, who are the people or the situations that when we leave we feel more like a 7 or an 8? Not every time, but most of the time. Those things or those people that lift us up. And then what are the people that maybe instead of feeling like a 5, we're continuously feeling like a 3 or a 2, where we're feeling worse after spending time together? How can we either reinforce boundaries or spend maybe a little less time with those that are depleting us, or more boundaried and set times, and really reconfiguring how I'm working in those relationships? And how can I spend more time with the people that are lifting me up? Or how can I find some of those people that lift me up online, in person, or through other means to connect better? Power. So we all need power, and that looks different for children versus adults, but where we can have some choice in what we're doing. Very important at work and at home. Fun. I think a lot of people are just missing that. What can we do to be silly and to put a smile on our face? Survival, basic food and health and warmth needs. What are we doing there to support ourselves? And a lot of times we were taught that the survival needs come first, but in this model, these are all equally important. In fact, the need to love and belong can sometimes take precedence over all others. And then freedom. So again, having some choice, having some freedom to be myself. I can tell you at that time in my life, the basic needs that I was missing was love and belonging. I certainly had a strong connection with my son, but both in my personal and my professional life, that was something that was missing, or at least that I felt was missing right at that time. And then fun. So I was working very hard toward survival and freedom and getting myself to a better place, but I also had too much on my plate and was not doing enough to really just enjoy life. We can look at some of these common characteristics for gifted kids and adults and how they might end up looking positive or negative based on how I'm doing emotionally and whether my basic needs are being met. So I don't want to spend an inordinate amount of time on these, but feel free to freeze them at this part of the video and to review again later. But a long attention span and intense concentration, that might mean that I have a lot to explore and I'm very passionate, but it can also make transitions especially difficult. So how can I add some support for those transitions and difficulties? Preference for those that are older. So sometimes, and I know I was like this as a child, I very much so often enjoyed hanging out with my friends' parents more than them when I was a kid. So we want to find people that have similar passions and interests, and that can be a challenge when we're younger or when we're not tapped into online or in-person activities where we're finding those that we have a lot in common with. Early and extensive vocabulary, so that can be great, and I loved talking with my son. He was a very early talker. We had great conversations, but then also making sure that we're not dominating conversations and discussions, manipulating, and that we're able to still be developmentally appropriate in these conversations and these preferences for older play dates as well. Excellent memory. So that can be difficult in a day-to-day situation in school where perhaps I've learned everything already and I'm sitting and waiting and bored with my peers. This is an opportunity we are in right now, and many of us are home, to be able to work at our own pace. And then extreme curiosity. That can be excessive at times as well, but also, of course, a wonderful trait. So none of these traits are good or bad, but they are common traits, and they can manifest themselves in more positive or negative ways based on if our needs are being met. A few more. High activity level, so that could be liking to learn through movement, but being very frustrated sitting still all day at school. This can be another opportunity where we can start practicing perhaps laying down while working or standing while working or taking lots of breaks. Rapid learning ability, again, being able to work at our own pace more often. Excellent sense of humor. So that can be challenging, perhaps if sarcasm is being used or humor that others aren't catching on to, but it can lead to great fun as well. Think of all the great comedians in the world that have such brilliant humor. Keen sense of observation. Well, sometimes they might notice every little thing. I know that can happen with my son. And a high degree of sensitivity, that's a beautiful thing to have. It often means a great deal of empathy and a great ability to understand different points of views and really feel for others, but it can also feel overwhelming. So thinking of things, I know even for myself today, in these last few days, I really had to step back from a lot of the news, and I did that before when I was going through my divorce as well. But step back from the media barrage with all of the negative messages and really make sure that I'm tuning into positive messages and positive news, and also just taking time to unplug and to really meditate, pray, do art, connect with others, show others that I care. And then abstract reasoning, so seeing the big picture, and not just the small details. But that could be exhausting as a parent. That can be children that are constantly asking why, and that can be a challenge as well. This comes from Sources of Strength is a model that's used primarily and originally for prevention of suicide. But I've loved looking at it in general because this is another time that I'd like you to stop and think about where your supports are. So remember the rainbow parachutes from when we were in school? And if we were all holding on to a different color, the more support we would have, right? We could keep that ball bouncing in the air and we could keep playing and having fun. However, if a couple of kids ran away or stopped holding on to their part of that rainbow parachute, things would start falling apart. So the idea is that we all need, and these are all based on research as well, 8 primary areas to support ourselves because we know that there's going to be challenging times. And we want to build those supports so that whether we're doing well or needing support, we've got them when we need them. And so as I go through this, think about areas where maybe you want to build up more strength in particular areas and then brainstorm ideas of how to do that. So mental health, knowing that there are 800 numbers and online numbers that can be called as well, where we can talk to counselors or trained professionals to support us, and that can include remotely or in person. Family support. So I like to use the word family. That may or may not be biological family, but who are the people, again, our family and friends, that make us feel like a 7 or an 8 as a general rule, that give us support. And that family might be biological. It could also be chosen. It could also be a neighbor. It could be a grandmother. It could be an uncle. Positive friends, mentors. A lot of times those are people older than us that we look up to, but not always. So think of mentors that that we look up to and that we can use as a beacon when we're trying to get grounded and get motivated or inspired. Healthy activities. That could be physical. A lot of people have physical hobbies, sports. That could be music. That could be art. Anything that really just feeds your soul. And generosity. We know a lot of times when we're not doing as well, we're getting stuck in ourself and our own story and our own struggles. And that's what happened to me for a little while during my struggles. And I could catch myself even at the beginning of some of the things that are happening now with the coronavirus and other things happening in the world, where I was getting stuck in my story and in myself. And so by reaching back out and helping others, touching base with and offering support to others that needed it, it did a great deal not only for them, but for me. And spirituality may mean religion for many people. Of course, that can be online or in person. That can be through readings. That can be through prayer. But spirituality, again, is what kind of feeds my soul, what makes my heart happy. For some people, that's nature. It could be nature in our own homes even. It could be a plant in our house. It could be a painting that makes us feel more alive and happy. And then medical access. So knowing who we can contact. And for some of us, we have insurance and we have a lot of supports. For others, that means being able to call 911, go into emergency clinics, and get the support when we need it. So things we can do to manage our stress. Think of non-competitive connections and passions. Find your tribe. Find the people that really you feel like they get you, and help your child find theirs. Please watch for rest and nutrition. One of the worst things that happened to me during that time was I was unable to sleep, and it really, well, I heard it my whole life, but I didn't experience it until then. I went days without being able to sleep more than a few minutes at a time, and ultimately that is what started to get to me. Nutrition. We know basic nutrition. Please keep an eye on that and just chart it out. So one of the things I've done for the last 5 years or so is I literally track each day. I track how much I'm sleeping and what I'm eating. And then when I'm off, I know I'm off, and it helps me get back into a good routine. Schedule downtime. Right now, that is easier to do than it often has been, but pick 1 to 2 activities and then skip the rest. Join support groups, including online. Talk with trained counselors and psychologists. Do some bibliotherapy and literature related to this and other gifted and talented topics. I like this slide here. If I had $1 for every existential crisis I've ever had, Does money even matter? We know that not only depression, but existential depression can be a bigger area of struggle for many people that are gifted. And so finding our purpose is very important. Embrace our uniqueness, help figure out what is our purpose. That does not have to be with work. And when we're children, that can feel even more difficult. But thinking about our own thinking, reflecting on our strengths and our personalities and what we can do to better support the world. This is a part that has typically kept me feeling great because my work as a teacher and a counselor throughout my life has really helped me in my purpose, which I know is to support others in finding their purpose as well and finding and pursuing their passions. Recognize and acknowledging our behaviors that might combat some of those toxic behaviors. So if I am not giving myself time for downtime, if I'm continuing to fall into that perfectionistic trap of never being enough or not doing enough, how can I be kind with myself? How can I perhaps journal each day and write about the things that I'm doing to continue to support myself in my development? Think about those sources of strength and what we can do to add to the world. Today, for instance, as I'm in my home and not with others, I made sure to reach out to others that I know that are all alone at home as well, and just spend some time talking and building a video like this, hoping that I can be a support in that way as well. This is a newer picture of myself, my son, my mom, and my stepdad, and my lovely dog, Bowser. And I can tell you that it's an ongoing process. So life has been great as I've worked on finding my sources of strength and taking care of myself. I've been able to do a much better job as a parent and as an educator supporting others. We can't save the world if we can't save ourselves. We need to take care of ourselves as well. And so when we think about those intensities or overexcitabilities, it can look beautiful when we take care of ourselves. It's the same personality, it's the same traits, but it's looked at in a healthy light versus when we're really struggling. I can be enthusiastic and energetic. I can be curious and loyal and empathetic, tenacious, creative, imaginational, self-aware, and intellectual. Take care of your needs. Find your supports. Build your supports. Love yourself. Care for others. Use your gifts and passions and be yourself. Thank you for joining me. I'm Vanessa, and I look forward to talking with you again.